So, I began to notice, while the Lord was explaining, that all the prisons weren't in one place. They were separated into vast, distant sections. So there was a section one side and the other, they were prisons quite far apart. Then the Lord continued to explain that this realm was shrouded in darkness, in the depths of darkness. So it was different from other places we had visited before. It turned out that the thousands of souls that were placed there were detained eternally. But in the description of the prisons, which seemed to be far apart, there were now long, dark passages, endless metal tunnels, and chasms filled with fire and black smoke where men were kept eternally. Some sections were plunged into almost total darkness. Others were lit by reddish flames rising from the ground. So it was so terrible. The Lord continued to explain, and I continued to see. The further we went, the heavier and more suffocating the atmosphere became. The Lord continued to speak to me. But I will tell you what the Lord was telling me. This place resembled immense metallic dark tunnel and fortresses built in the depths of a bottomless abyss. And I continued to observe this underworld environment. The ground was black, burned, and seemed covered by dark powers. The place seemed covered with strange marks left by the suffering of prisoners. Doomed souls had left their traces in these prisons since time forgotten. Thus the punishment that souls endured in time past could be felt and traced here. I had the impression of entering a prison where people have been severely punished for a long time, leaving traces of their torment behind. There were traces of the torments suffered by men for centuries. Men who fell in this place of torment suffered from generation to generation, and their suffering was marked in the ground of this prison. I could hear rusty iron gates opened and closed slowly with terrifying metallic clangs. Each movement of prison gates produced an echo that reverberated throughout the entire region, a feeling of suffering. I observed long chains, heated by the flames, hung along the walls, dragged across the floor. And there we were watching. When they moved, they produced a heavy, oppressive sound that made the whole prison around us tremble. Flames continued to leap out, sometimes fire continued to burst from these cracks in the ground. From the ground the light briefly illuminated those demonic figures moving between the cells. Some demons had monstrous appearances, as I had just explained. Deformed faces, eyes shining in the darkness, gigantic or disproportionate bodies. They continued to torture the men. They continued to exert their influence. Some resembled karatics, as I had explained. These demons were now restoring order. If a soul did not respect the established law of this realm, if someone disobeyed the demands of the torments they were to endure, the demons still had the authority to punish them, to inflict terrible torment upon them in this place. So we continued to see, and these demons continued to wander. This is how the Lord was now explaining to me the realities of each prison. As we moved forward, he told me, "Look ahead." Cries were everywhere, lamentations, endless supplications from condemned souls. We heard the voices of men and women calling for help, while others seemed lost. When we looked into their cells, there were souls who were utterly exhausted. They had wept so much, they had begged so much, they had pushed against the bars so many times without strength, and they could no longer cry out. They could only cry out softly. The others, however, still had the strength to cry out. They continued to seek help. They cried out in pain in the darkness. They begged for help. At times, this noise was mixed with mysterious sounds, demonic forces that were within. But something was still hidden in that prison that the Lord wanted me to understand. He was telling me that there are cells where souls are placed. Each cell was determined by the actions the person had committed on earth. Then he said that the souls are placed in prisons were suffocated, behind them the doors were shut forever and they are not coming out, they can never leave, they are trapped in eternal suffering. The Lord said, "We will now begin to visit the prisoners, and you will know why they are here and how long it has been since they left earth. I will give you knowledge of this place so that you can fully understand humanity." Then he began to tell me and reveal a number of prisons that were located in this region, locked inside this abyss. He told me, "Here we will visit the prison of those who hid the truth on earth. We will visit the prison of false Christians. We will visit the prison of those who mismanaged their families on earth. We will visit the prison of those who used the word of God to mislead the multitude. We will visit the prison of deceitful appearances and hypocrites. He also said, we will visit the prison of those who sow division and conflict, those who are at the root of separation. He told me again, we will visit the prison of thieves. Then, as he spoke to me, each prison name seemed to resonate deep within, like a sentence engraved eternally. And we began to walk toward the first prison. As the Lord had told me, as we advanced, the cries of the prisoners became increasingly clear and endless. As we passed by, the people in prisons were crying out to the Lord. They were asking for help, for the Lord to grant them mercy. Each cell seemed to breathe with immense suffering. Each prison seemed alive, as if it held within itself endless torments against men, against the crimes that men have committed on earth. And every iron bar of every prison resonated, felt as if it had accumulated the suffering of men, the tokens of souls placed there eternally. The prison, guarded by terrifying demons, continued to house thousands more souls, cast out generation after generation. So, as we advanced, we were now heading into the first section of the prison, called the prison of those who concealed the truth. It was a place of great affliction reserved for those who lived in deceit, those who lived in lies, and those who lived in deceit. Then, as we approached, my eyes fell upon the first burning cell. In the first cell, I now saw the image of a woman. She was weeping, sprawled on the gleaming floor. These sounds resonated like endless echoes within the metal wall, within the iron bars of her prison. This was imprinted with profound regret. So this woman was regretting everything she had done on earth, but there was no way to escape. It was as if her fate was sealed. The woman was weeping. Her appearance, as I said before, well, we saw that when she was in the amphitheater, she had lost a lot of flesh stuck to her eyes. So, she found herself in that place. The flame was coming out of everywhere. She no longer had God, her body was rotting. The flame was coming out everywhere. She was so charred, she deeply regretted it. But she no longer had any possibility of returning to earth. I looked at everything she had experienced on earth. She was reciting, she was pleading, she was asking for forgiveness. But it was too late for her. Why? Because the flames that continued to torment her in that place were marked by the weight of the secret she had concealed when she hid the truth on earth. This woman was spinning on the ground, but at her chest there was something much like a padlock. The padlock felt incredibly heavy, and her hands had entered as if she was searching for something in the flame, and fire was coming out everywhere. Her body was truly covered in fire. The Lord began to tell me the story of this woman. She told me, I will give you understanding because her torment was atrocious. Remember that you will never know, you cannot know if it is a woman or a man. The only distinction was made through the voice. It was the voice that showed that this is a woman and that is a man. Now the Lord began to explain the story of this woman to me. She told me that this woman, when she was on earth, she was married. Her husband traveled. She traveled so much because his work was elsewhere. So, the husband was a merchant. He traveled, bought goods, and returned home. However, in her husband's absence, the wife felt deprived of her sexual needs. Since she was deprived of her sexual needs, she resumed her relationship with her former partner during her husband's absence. Since her husband would come, he could go on a trip, stay for 3 months, and return to his wife, or stay with her for only 2 or a month before leaving again because it was the only way for him to earn a living and feed his family. They had children together, of course, but the wife, also experiencing sexual deprivation and feeling deprived of her husband during his absence, decided to resume her relationship with her ex-partner. They were sleeping together having sex. As life goes on, the Lord tells me that this woman will become pregnant. But how can she tell her husband? She's already married, and she's spoken to her ex-husband, you know, I'm married, and I'm currently pregnant. What should I do? Because if my husband finds out, the divorce will be finalized, but I can't lose my marriage. And her ex-husband then say, well, I don't have the means to raise the child, it's practically impossible. I could never take care of this pregnancy. So, they made an agreement. The woman found a way to give the responsibility for the pregnancy to her husband, who did not know that he was being betrayed. When the husband returns from the travel, the woman had sex with her husband. Days later she told her husband, my dear, after our lovemaking I got pregnant. Well, the man didn't know that he was betrayed, and the woman kept the secret of her adultery, attributing the pregnancy to her husband. The child was born, and grew up, and until the death of this woman she never confessed the truth to her husband. She died with the weight of her secrets to protect her family. This child was attributed to her husband. The woman knew that it wasn't her husband's child, her husband wasn't the child's real father, but she kept her secrets until her death. And that's why after her death, she ended up in this place. After her, in another cell, I saw a man fighting. We looked around at the burning bars. This man was trying to tear the bar of his cell to get out. He was shouting, let me out. I can't take it anymore. I've had enough. I'm suffering terribly, I'm tormented. The tighter his hands clung to the iron bars, the more the flames engulfed his fingers. He was shouting. The Lord will also explain to me why this man ended up in this place. In his life this man started having children out of wedlock without ever telling his wife. That's why, after his death, his soul was sent directly here. He hid the truth from his wife. He didn't want to tell her that he had started having children. Being married, he should have approached his wife, asked for forgiveness, and found a compromise regarding his problems, no matter how difficult it was. But this man preferred to keep the secrets of the story until his time. That's why the lie he kept, the lie he protected for so long on earth, couldn't protect him here. That's why he ended up here, in this place of torment. After him, I'm going to see yet another person, still in his cell, tormented, also by demons. Still in that first cell. Yes. In the cell of the one who hid the truth on earth. There was yet another person there, but now he was wearing that jacket that doctors wear on earth. He was also wearing that, along with everything the doctor uses on earth, and the demons were now using it to torment him as well. Next to this gentleman stood a baby who was demanding God's judgment, demanding divine punishment, saying, this gentleman interrupted my life. He prevented me from living on earth. And the more these fetus shouted, the more the demons were tormenting the man. That's when I'll ask the Lord again, why did he end up in that place? The Lord will tell me that he was a doctor. In fact, he was a family doctor on earth. However, the head of this family, although married, had gotten a woman pregnant outside the family. When the woman became pregnant, he told his mistress, if my wife finds out about this pregnancy, it will cause problems in our home. So he went to the same family doctor who treated his wife and children, asking him to terminate his mistress's pregnancy to avoid harming his family. The doctor agreed. He did the dirty work, which was paid for by the man, and the same man also paid his mistress to keep quiet about the situation. The doctor who did this dirty work broke the contract he had signed with the family. He terminated the pregnancy and is now in this place. After this doctor, I found another person who was also in this place. He too was tormented. The Lord will give me knowledge. He was there because when he was on earth, he worked for a company. Among the departments, he was just an employee. However, one day, a worker died on the job. Since he was also a worker, investigators had to arrive to conduct an inquiry. Now, the company paid him money to hide the truth. Because if the information and damning evidence were made available to the investigators, the company would have to pay a large sum in compensation to the family of the deceased man. The truth had to be hidden, and the story of what happened changed so that the company wouldn't be held responsible. So, the company paid him a sum of money. He accepted this and gave false testimony. And when he died, he too ended up in this place of torment. Besides him, I also observed in the same section a child fighting with a glass, and the glass was crying out for justice. I also asked the Lord why he too had ended up in this place. The Lord will also say, let me tell you his story. This child was so unruly that he broke the glass his father was using for water. The mother, fearing her husband's harsh reaction, said, if I tell the truth and my husband knows it was the child who did this, the punishment will be severe because my husband was in the habit of brutally punishing children. The mother tried to hide the truth. The father arrived and asked for water. He was given water along with another glass. He simply asked his wife, where's my preferred glass? The wife said, I was doing the dishes when the glass fell. The husband just said, I thought it was your unruly son. She said, no, it wasn't him. The matter was settled between the mother and the children. Unfortunately, the child did not receive a correction for his mistake. And he continued along that path where his mother continued to defend his errors to spare him from her husband's severe punishment. That's how the child, after his death, would find himself in that place again. You might even think it could bring the child back to the place of torment. The child hadn't confessed the truth to his father about using his property without telling him, and destroying it. His mother defended him, but Mom could no longer come, and the punishments were certainly sealed. The fate was eternal for the child, who found himself with his father's broken glasses. He tried to fight to free himself from it. He cried out in despair, saying, "O Lord, come, save me, have mercy on me, Lord, open for me." And the Lord was filled with regret and terror, saying it was already too late, the fate was sealed. The Lord will tell him again, all possibilities exist on earth, but here, there are no more possibilities. He continued to beg the Lord, convinced that mercy could still be revealed to him in this place. He said, "Lord, I know that you are the God of love, you forgive sins, save me." And Jesus will answer him with a solemn truth, "This grace that I offered you, you could only grasp when you were on earth. So here, it is already too late." After passing this child, we will return to the story, which I think is where we can use another term today. It was the story of a woman. The woman found herself in her cell, which was ablaze. Inside, she was being dragged along as if by a force. This force resembled a shining figure that was pulling the woman from all sides. It was also whipping the woman with chains of fire. The woman was screaming terribly. Now, seeing her torment, I began to ask the Lord because fire was coming out everywhere, and this unclean spirit continued to torment her. Sometimes, she tried to smother it on the burning ground. The woman begged the spirit for mercy, but it was shouting with joy as if it had achieved its goal. The Lord will tell me, the married woman had been with another man before her second marriage. She had children. Then, she lost her first marriage. She found herself in her second marriage with another man who also had children. The woman came to the wedding with 3 children. The man also came with 3. The man said, "Well, this is important, we are together today. You have 3, I have 3. Let's put our children together and build our new family. It doesn't matter, life will go on." The man's love surpassed everything. The man made no distinction between his biological children and his wife's children. So much so that the man invested significant sums of money to buy plots of land, property, and vehicles for the family. He told his wife, "Take this money, buy a plot of land, and put our children's names on it." The man wanted the woman to put her children's names on it, as well as her wife's children's names. This posed no problem for the man. But the woman used her position. She began to exclude this man's children from the inheritance, wanting all the property to go to her own children, excluding her husband's children. Trusting his wife, the man bought a car and gave it to her, unaware that he had been betrayed. The man was so sincere with his wife, but she tried to hide the truth. While she was doing this, she would tell her family, "I bought a plot of land, if I'm not here today, it belongs to my children." Over time, she became pregnant, but the pregnancy caused complications. He decided to have an abortion. The woman and her husband were taken to the hospital because the pregnancy was causing problems during treatment. The woman died. Upon her death, her family arrived. They claimed her estate. The man said, "No, we were together. My wife left, but her children stayed. I am their father. I must preserve this family. The children will stay with me. They are all my children. I will continue to invest in their lives until the end. I don't want to destroy this family we built together." But the woman's family said, "No, we will not accept. Our sister is deceased. Here is proof of all possible assets." They brandished documents showing plots of land with only the names of the woman's children on them. This man said, "But I bought these houses for all our children." The woman's family said no, all the assets belong to her own children. The man realized he had been deceived by his wife. He was left with nothing. The inheritance was gone. They filed lawsuits. The man did not receive enough. The separation. It was formalized. The woman's children returned to their mother's family with the property that the mother had tried to take through spitefulness towards her husband, who was a good man, a man of great heart, an upright man, a faithful man, who wanted to help his family and make his house prosper. Unfortunately, this woman, after her death, because she had stolen from her husband during their marriage, ended up there. Next to her cell was another man. This man was there. He was fighting over money. There was a sum of money there, and he was demanding God's justice. And why did this man end up in this place? The Lord will give me the knowledge. And why was he fighting? He was sobbing over the money. The Lord told me, this man had stolen money from his wife's bag. His wife went to bathe, and the man stayed behind. He took some money from his wife's bag. When the wife returned, instead of telling her the truth, he remained silent. The woman, having left her bag in the living room, retrieved it after getting ready and discovered the money was gone. Since she lived with her cousin, she called her, asking, "Where is my money?" The cousin confessed that she knew nothing. The man, who knew he had taken the money, instead of telling his wife it was him, chose to remain silent. What would happen? The woman became enraged and fiercely threatened to throw her cousin out of the house if she didn't return the money. The cousin wept bitterly, saying, "Auntie, I know absolutely nothing. I didn't take your money." She threatened her cousin for 3 days. The girl said she didn't take that money, but in the end the aunt finally forgave her. Life went on as normal, and that man, after his death, found himself in that cell with the money of his own wife he had stolen from the earth. This is the fate of those who hide the truth. They did not speak the truth even if they knew the truth, they hid the truth. We will stop here for today.